So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
What's the matter with that cat there?
Must be full of reefer.
Full of reefer?
Yeah, man.
You mean that cat's high?
Sailing.
Sailing?
Lightly.
We now wander off the beaten path with an update from the Reefer Reporters.
Hello and welcome to the Reefer Reporters with Newshawks Kim Cooper and myself, Al Graham, as we bring you Canadian and international cannabis news. This week it's from April the 23rd to April the 30th, 2018. Well, Kim, how's things?
Oh, things are going pretty well, Al. Very, very busy. We're going to add in a couple of extra days at the start of the 23rd week of the 23rd, though, for a few of our stories this week.
Correct.
I think.
Yes, you are correct there, Kim. We had last week off, and there's a couple stories before that we're going to include in today's program, and I can tell you it is packed full, isn't it, Kim?
It most certainly is. My computer is puking up a storm over here saying, what are you doing to me? I've got so many bloody windows open, and it was tough to whittle down to the choices that we have. But we're going to try and get them all in, and we're going to start, of course, with 420 that happened across Canada and across the globe not too long ago. It
sure did. It's a celebration of the cannabis movement. If you're not aware what the 420 is, it's also my wedding anniversary. But our first article has to do with probably one of the largest ones in the country, and that is in Toronto.
Yes, Toronto this year, for the very first time, Toronto hosted its annual 420 event at Nathan Phillips Square, which is Toronto's City Hall front parking lot, front rotunda area. It was jam-packed full of people. They did try new organizers for the last couple of years has been Chris Goodwin and Aaron Goodwin and his crew that has taken over organizing the 420 event. Used to be done by Matt Murnaugh and the Hash Mob. This year they tried a new route and they contacted City Hall and applied for a permit to be at Nathan Phillips Square. They got turned down for that permit, but that didn't stop them.
No, it didn't. They just went right ahead and still held the event. Yes, they couldn't have the vendors and things like that. But that doesn't stop. Just because you can't have the vendors doesn't mean you still can't have a nice peaceful protest. And as you said, they passed the torch. Mike Rita was the one who was involved in organizing. Mike is a comedian. And at 420, they say that he lit a big joint that weighed 56 grams, a 2-ounce joint.
2-ounce joint, and it was puffed in front of a crowd which was estimated to be between 15 and 20,000 people, which is exactly why we outgrew the Yonge and Dundas Square.
Yes, well, that's what they were getting at, Yonge and Dundas Square over the years. So I could imagine that there's more at this event than that was at Yonge and Dundas Square. That was, I don't know if some of the news articles, actually there was one news article that said there was only a few hundred people there. And I'm looking at this photo, I'm going, a few hundred people? Like, where's the cement?
Yeah. Well, the area is said to be able to hold up to 50,000 people. So, I mean, even the estimates between 15 and 20,000, I think are extremely low. I think they were closer to that 50,000 mark.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it whatsoever.
Yeah,
and there was some vendors who did try to set up. The police did come in and remove them. But I believe they still were allowed to have a small setup with a sound system to allow speakers.
Yeah, they allowed a PA system and stuff like that was permitted for the day's event. I mean, that many people, really, permit or not, when that many people show up, what the hell's the city supposed to do? You can't do nothing.
You can't arrest all those people. Well, I guess that they could try to cattle them all, but they've done that before. But yeah, that's a lot of people to have to process. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exhaustion on city services. I mean, and not to mention, it would probably not wind up being a peaceful event. I mean, this is Nathan Phillips Square. We're debating the numbers, but we're estimating between 20,000 and 50,000 people were at this venue, and it was completely incident free. Tell me, what other event or festival do you have in the city of Toronto with that many people when no incidents are reported?
Exactly. You don't see that very often. And talking about big crowds like that, Ottawa, they also held their 420 event up there, that Russell Barth. He has a show here on Lifestyle Radio. And he held his annual 420 up there in the big city.
Yep. They did it up on the hill. They piled onto the hill to fill the hill, as they say. Emma Boniface was a mother. Watched her mother lose herself to opioid addiction, and she was the keynote speaker. A very young lady, telling of the trials and tribulations that she had gone through, and how cannabis can help people in the future not go through some of the things that she's gone through. Russell Barth, as you said, the host of that event, did a fantastic job organizing the event and containing all the people, and once again went off without a hitch and without any incidents.
Yes, and they only were allowed to use half of the front lawn of Parliament Hill. One half was used for the ice rink back over the wintertime, and so that ground wasn't ready yet to be used by anybody walking on it. So they had the one half, and they still had an estimate of about almost 20,000 people there as well. So they packed the place, that's for sure.
That's for sure. They most certainly did. Many speakers were on the Hill talking about the medicinal benefits of cannabis and the unjust laws around it, the trials and tribulations and hoops patients have to jump through, not to mention the persecution of non-patients as well as patients being persecuted still because, some police forces just are unaware of current laws and guidelines that protect patients. So we're still going through it, and that's what these protests are for, is to raise awareness about that.
And we have a long history of these being peaceful.
Yes,
obviously.
Exactly. From large scale to small scale, going down to the smaller scale end of the scale. We had a 420 event in Northern Ontario in Timmins this year. Of course, I've got to get that on the map during the show today. Timmins did host its first annual 420 event this year. It was organized by a group of 8 individuals that live in the Timmins and Timmins region, and we were happy to report that we had over 175 people visit our event table throughout the 4.5 hours that we were celebrating in the park. And our event as well went off without incident. We had some speakers, some educational materials. It was a great day. Yes.
Well, it sounds like it. You had 175 people because you gave away.
Yeah, we gave away swag bags. We gave away bags filled with stuff. The first 110 people that arrived at our event booth got them pre-filled with stuff. And then we had another 65 after that we had just empty bags that people were able to fill with a host of materials that we had available for free at the table beside them. So we gave away 175 bags, and people were coming and looking for more after they had run out. So for sure, we had over 175 people in attendance.
Good. That's, first time through. You're way up north. You guys still have snow on the ground.
Yeah, we did. We had to shovel out. We were there with snow blowers the day before, shoveling out the event space and chipping away the ice off of the concrete area to prep the area. I mean, it's still cold up here. We've still got frozen lakes.
Oh, you can keep them. We're not in no hurry for them down here. Okay. Now, we just discussed, some past 420s going on. And next we have this coming Saturday. We have the global marijuana marches.
Yeah, GMMs taking place across the planet. Over 80 countries take part in the global marijuana march annually. And this year is the 20th anniversary of the march.
20 years in Toronto. Wow, that's been a long time. Yeah, it's been a long time. And, there's an event that was similar like the 420. It was run at one time with permits. The permits were revoked years ago, and it hasn't stopped. They still get thousands and thousands of people that show up.
Absolutely. Me being a Northern Ontario girl for the last 15 years, I still travel to Toronto every year and attend the GMMs. There's been only a very small handful of event dates that I've missed over the last 15 years. I try and get down every single year. This year, sadly, I will be missing the Toronto event, but I am excited to be taking part in the Global Marijuana March, very first one ever to take place in, once again, Timmins, Ontario. Yep, Timmins is joining on board with the rest of the planet, and we are hosting our very first Global Marijuana March, Timmins. You can meet everybody up at Hollinger Park at 1 o'clock, and we will march en masse alongside Toronto at 2 p.m.
There you go. And you're going to do similar things as Toronto. You're also going to have speakers after the march, because in Toronto, I believe it's Sensible Ontario is having a rally afterwards because of here in Ontario, we're going to have an election this year. And cannabis, obviously, and legalization is still a big issue.
Yep, we are going to have speakers at the end of the march. They will be including patient advocates that will be telling their stories on why they use cannabis. We'll also be having speakers that will be talking about the effects of legalization and how patients and non-patients alike will still face persecution in the future, as well as patients' rights and a host of other subjects, I'm sure.
Yes, for sure. Okay, well, let's go from the great times to some people say not so great time, and that's into laws and regulations.
Yeah, laws and regs. Canada is debating laws to determine how and when motorists are too high to drive.
Yes, it is. They're trying to determine, all kinds of things. There's so many different questions that they've come up with, and some of us are just sort of sitting back, patients probably do it quite often, and there never seems to be a big issue, but, they're coming up with,
They're coming up with these arbitrary numbers. And I mean, they are completely arbitrary because cannabis is subjective. If you're a patient, you're consuming large quantities of cannabinoids regularly through various means: inhalation, your diet, drops, creams, bath bombs. I mean, you name it. There are so many ways of consuming cannabis, and we all as patients use various ways. So our cannabinoid levels are going to be high when tested. That does not prove impairment. It just proves consumption. I've said this time and time again. I don't know how they're coming up with these numbers for patients. If patient levels drop to the numbers that they're specifying in some of these new legislation that they're considering, then a patient's levels would be so low that would show they aren't using their medication. And if you're not using your medication, then you're suffering from the effects that you're using that medication to stop. Yeah. So you're in worse shape if you're not at the right level. You can't use levels to dictate these arbitrary means for saying you're impaired. They don't exist.
Yeah, and they're going to be using the saliva test, swipe across the tongue in order to detect it. Yeah.
I don't see how this is going to work. Patients' levels will always show positive and show impaired, and we aren't. Yeah. And it's that simple. I understand the need for wanting to have a system to test for impairment. I understand the need for that. But because you need something, I don't think you should just put in whatever system, even though it's unproven science and it doesn't work, just to appease the masses and say that there's something there. I mean, that's not the solution.
Yep, no, it's not. Well, they say that Bill 46 has raised eyebrows in the cannabis and legal communities, as it has, obviously. The way it's presented, drivers with between 2 and 5 nanograms of THC in the bloodstream will get a summary conviction and a fine up to $1,000, or less punishment for a more severe punishment for higher numbers. A person with more than 5 nanograms of THC in their bloodstream could face criminal prosecution. A nanogram, one nanogram is 1/100000th of a gram.
Yeah.
So if you got more than 2/10000000th of a gram in your bloodstream, you're impaired.
So I'm impaired when I wake up.
Yeah, I so am I. I'll be impaired in a month's time from now.
I mean, at those levels, I'm impaired when I get out of bed.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, they're arbitrary. It's once again another court challenge. We go back
for
to court.
Sure. Oh,
we
for
go
sure.
back.
I know Kirk Tusaw tweeted about it recently, and he was saying the same thing. There wouldn't be anybody even allowed to drive.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is just it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. And back to court we go.
Back to court. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And
But there's
that was an article from your friend John Hiltz, I see.
Yes, it was John Hiltz, a friend of the Pace Radio Show. I loved it. Interviewed him. It was a great interview not too long ago.
Yeah.
Good news, though, on the front with government, a little bit leniency when it comes to producing.
Yes. Canada has announced craft-style licenses for small-scale cannabis producers.
Yeah, until now, cannabis producers under the country's ACMPR system were only subject to one tier of licensing, with cultivation and sales licenses doled out for the production and sale of dried cannabis and cannabis oil. A new set of license types will be made available for intermediary processing of cannabis, which would also be between standard and micro licensing. So a lot of big words there. A lot of new terms coming out that we have to try and follow.
They're going to, in addition, cannabis producers can apply for nursery designation, which means they can produce only seeds and seedlings. So you could buy clones from these companies.
Yeah, so there's going to be, it sounds like they're expanding it a little bit, and there's going to be several layers to all of this. So you're going to have mini grows and micro grows, and I don't even know all of them. I mean, there's so many different words.
When we had Lisa Campbell on the Pace Radio Show, she had talked about the micro producers and a micro processor, and how one business can get both licenses so they could actually do both parts of it all. Yeah. And just to let you know, those nursery licenses will also allow you to produce hemp as well.
Yeah. So now you can get a micro grow, a mini grow, or a nursery license. I mean, there's several expansions, and I know I'm going to have to sit down and learn about all these new terms.
Yeah, now I don't know if it's harder to get a micro brewing license for a small micro processor, like in the little town I used to live in Campbellford. There, they have a small micro brew there. I don't know whether it's going to be harder or whether it'll be equivalent to that style license. But obviously, it's going to take a few dollars. But, they have to allow smaller growers. They can't rely on something that requires hundreds of millions of dollars to build.
Yeah. So there's going to be standard, micro, and nursery at this point. And who knows what new ones will come in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and there's no limit.
It's good news that they're expanding.
And there's no limit on the numbers that they're going to license either.
Yeah. So I mean, that's something to look forward to for people that are interested in getting a foothold in the industry in some capacity, but aren't looking to go big.
It may allow some really good craft growers now be able to jump into the market, maybe get two real good craft growers together in order to come up with a business model. I don't know.
Yeah. It'd be nice to see the expansion on that for sure. It's exciting times. I mean, when you look at the alcohol side of it, there's craft breweries, craft wineries. You go in, you can make your own beer there. They have classes. You can pay somebody to make it for you there and take care of it for you. I mean, there's all kinds of different elements. I'd like to see that evolve for the cannabis industry as well.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, let's move on to some more government stuff here, and this is in the provincial government in BC. An article out of a new publication, out of a newspaper, and we're going to talk about another newspaper later in the show, but Straight Cannabis. It's a publication from out west.
Yeah, brand new little rag that's out there, kind of interesting. British Columbia is now looking to introduce legislation for the regulation and implementation for the legalization of cannabis in British Columbia. They're changing their position a little bit.
Yeah. They say that this marks a major milestone and puts our province in position to not only be ready for federal cannabis legalization later this summer, but does so in a way that reflects the province's goals for legalized cannabis that prioritize public health, safety, in particular for our youth and children.
Again, the youth and the children. What about the children? What about the children?
The children walk by patios and bars and see people drinking all the time.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about that?
Like I keep saying, this isn't a new drug that's coming on the market that nobody's ever seen before, people. It's been part of our lives for decades.
I see that. Yeah, exactly. I see that the province, the distribution and authority will be run similar as here in Ontario with the Liquor Distribution Board. The LDB will be looking after all that stuff.
Yeah, so a very different model for BC than what people were expecting, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I heard some good comments, and then as the days went on, you could see some people coming out with some real good questions.
Yep, for sure. It's something to watch for sure. The BC situation is definitely evolving. They embraced illegal cannabis that was illegal on a federal level, and they developed their own system provincially for many years prior to this legalization that's coming now. But now that it is happening federally, they're changing their entire structure in Vancouver as well.
There's something, it's not written in this article in Straight Cannabis, but there was something I read in another article, whereas a person could get like 3 months, 90 days, if the cannabis plants are seen to be growing. So somebody couldn't grow their plants on their balcony. Or say you had your plants growing in your backyard and you only had a short fence and people could see it. You're subject to jail time. BC is becoming one of the more strict provinces and stringent rules for federal legalization, which is kind of a flip-flop from the position that they've held for so long. Yeah, because at the beginning people were liking things because they were seeing public retailers. We're not seeing that here in Ontario because they were seeing a mix of public and private. And then, they come out with, if somebody sees you growing a plant, you could face jail time.
Yeah. The right to grow issue is not being wholeheartedly embraced. That's for sure.
And you know what else I see here that's similar to Ontario's is their logo.
Yeah.
I don't know if they spent $650,000 on this logo. Ontario cannabis stores, black writing with a white background.
Yeah.
In British Columbia, it's BC cannabis stores, white lettering with a black background.
Yeah.
Very similar, not quite the same, but very similar between the two.
Pretty much. And together there's a 1.5 mil, right?
There you go. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Our government hard works, spending our tax dollars. Speaking of tax dollars are largely used to pay our doctors. Doctors are in the news these days as well.
Yes, they are. One in particular. Oh, let me see if I can find his name. Dr. Jeff Blackmer. He is the vice president of the Canadian Medical Association. And he says that they should end the medical cannabis program in Canada.
Yeah, according to this Black Mur. Our view is really that now the government is obviously intending to legalize this. Once this substance that's available to all Canadians, there is really no need for physicians to continue to serve in that gatekeeper role, according to the Canadian Medical Association. That was his latest statement on cannabis.
Yes. He mentioned that at a recent conference, and from my understanding, he was booed and he left. Doctors booed him.
Yeah, doctors booed back. There was almost a brawl at this event for the doctors. There were many varied opinions. Most were on board with staying as the so-called gatekeepers of medicinal cannabis. There were some agreeing dissenters that agreed with this position that they should no longer be gatekeepers. This has been a huge fear of mine for a very long time, and I've largely suspected that this is the route that government and doctors intend to go in the future. I'm shocked that I'm seeing stuff like this take place so quickly.
Yeah, this isn't right. You know, there's so much more to this leaves me an impression that the doctor believes that everybody smokes cannabis. He has no idea about suppositories. He has no ideas about capsules, or has no ideas about creams. He just thinks that everybody smokes.
Yeah.
Like, because you can't buy any of these products, even edibles. You can't buy any of these products in any of these stores. So how can you tell patients just to go out and smoke? That sounds like MMAR days before the Smith court case.
That's right. That's right. We've been to the Supreme Court of Canada. We've won our case to extract the medicines that we require so that we can take them in a means that we don't have to smoke it. Yeah. I mean, smoking is the last thing on the list on any medicinal cannabis patient's list of things that they want to do in the future. We're using creams. We're using bath bombs. We're using suppositories. We're using lotions. We're using drops in tincture for underneath our tongue. Vaporizing, if you're going to consume by inhalation, vaporizing is the most common method these days over smoking. Smoking's last on the list.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of patients who will reach out to their doctor because not everybody's knowledgeable in cannabis and not everybody knows a cannabis advocate. So they'll talk to their doctor about it. And they'll have questions, like how much do they take and how often should it be, taken and what kind of risks are involved. And Dr. Mark Ware from McGill University in Montreal, who has done a government-funded study on cannabis for pain, he says these are kinds of questions that patients will be wanting to ask, and he's worried that by eliminating the medical program, that takes the clinical oversight, for the doctor's involvement in patients on this. They're just going to, send somebody who's dealing with MS and just send them to the OCS store and pick up some cannabis and they don't know anything about it?
This is a big problem nationwide. LPs aren't teaching patients. Nobody's teaching patients. The only people that are teaching patients are other patients.
Yes.
And once again, it's falling to us to help the ones that are coming in. And we're the ones that are getting the job done. And the government is just refusing to even acknowledge this. Doctors struggle with it. We have a few progressive doctors that are on board now and doing, small clinics and stuff like that in their regions. Dr. Ira Price comes to mind, with his yoga practice and stuff like that. He teaches people about tinctures and lotions and extracts. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just ridiculous for them to eliminate the program. You're eliminating research, and if you eliminate research, then they can turn around and say, "Well, there's no evidence. There's no research."
Yeah. Well, the research is there. You just got to look for it.
Just
open your eyes. Click, click, click. There's this really cool thing. It's called Google.
I spent 4 hours yesterday with a patient. and their spouse talking about medicinal cannabis, because this person didn't know anything about cannabis, and I took them to a website where they had a PDF in it, and maybe this doctor should go there. It's got over 3,000 pages. I believe it's like 3,100, 3,200 pages of just medicinal links, and you're looking at 10 links per page, over 30,000 links of medical information, and this doctor says there isn't any.
Yeah, well, of course
Ridiculous.
there is. It's out there. I mean, this medicine has been studied through the ages. If you look back far enough, you can find stuff on scrolls from ancient China. I mean, it's out there. All you've got to do is open your eyes and look for it.
Correct. Exactly. Okay, Kim, we got 2 more stories before we go to our break. And let's get them done, because all these stories have been done in Canada, and we got 2 more here in Canada, because like we said, it's a busy show. We do have some international stories coming after. So
now we're going to head down to the East Coast and talk a little bit about Bible Hill, Nova Scotia, and a challenge going on down there.
Yeah, that's right. A constitutional challenge is shaping up in a cannabis case. A defense lawyer for a marijuana dispensary owner has served notice of intent to pursue a charter of rights challenge to the man's drug charges.
Yeah, I've been reading about this a little bit the last couple of months, and how it was going to shape up. And he's going forth. He says no, he'll be proceeding on that date via telephone in a provincial court. He talked in Truro on Wednesday, and he said he's putting forth a constitutional challenge, and I will be using those dates to argue constitutionality.
There you go. That's right. It's good to hear. Looks like those dates are January the 7th.
Yeah.
So January 7th and 9th, 2019 is when it's going to start. Yeah, it takes a while to get there, but
it takes a while. These things don't happen overnight. That's for sure.
Yeah. His client was charged with trafficking in cannabis and cannabis resins for the purpose and possessing it. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're trafficking it, obviously you have it on you. But I mean, he was supplying a need, once again, like we were saying, to patients. The only people out there helping patients are other patients. This guy understands the need. He understands what the patients are going through, and he was helping patients get what they need. We can't buy it from an LP. We can't buy it anywhere else. We have to buy it in a dispensary or through somebody that we know that's making it for us. That's the only place that we have to go. So hopefully whoever hears this case, the judge will bear all of this in mind when making his decision.
Yeah. Well, Kim, on to our last story for Canada before we go for a break. And this happens to be a little more local to me, actually.
Yeah. Peterborough way. We're out in the Kawarthas, where you can look, you can smell, but you can't touch.
That's right. There is now, this is the first that I know of, a medical cannabis grow operation is on display at Peterborough Hydroponics Center. That's right. You can walk into the store, and walk to the back, and you will see the plants growing there under the lights, and you can see the system that's working, and it's the flood table and all that. I know all this because I have personally seen it.
Yeah, very cool that we're seeing actual living cannabis plants growing inside an operating grow room that would be for sale. So you can see in action how the lights, the fan, the actual grow room, the tent itself looks, the humidity levels that it would keep, that kind of thing. You would be able to see it in action, that the plants are enjoying their environment. They're healthy. They're growing, all of that. So, I mean, this is a very, very cool. It's been a bone of contention with Health Canada for having a actual grow up being seen. But they were able to get around and work with them a little bit, but they had some hurdles to climb.
Yeah. It wasn't something that was done overnight. I know that Mike told me himself that it took a while to do that. But he believes he's the first store here in Canada or in Ontario that has a license to grow cannabis. I believe he's growing it for 2 patients.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. It's kind of wild seeing it behind bars, so to speak.
Yeah,
I mean, the measures that he had to take were extreme to please Health Canada, but their main concern was that people will not be able to touch the plant or reach the plant to touch it in any way, so that perhaps they could, I don't know, are they going to steal it or take pieces off of it or whatever, but that's the one insurance that they had to give was it can't be touched.
Yeah, he does have bars around him, and in the photo in the article here in the mykawartha.com, you will see the bars right there in the photo.
Yeah. So behind bars, you can look, you can smell, you can see, but you cannot touch.
That's right. Okay, Kim, we've been on quite a spree there, so let's take a break.
Let's take a dab break.
Okay. After break, you're going to have your Canada history moment.
Yes, I will. A moment.
And quick little hint.
Blurb.
Quick little
hint. Oh, might have to do something to do with a segment of the population doesn't seem to get in trouble very often.
Okay, all right. But before that, we're going to hear a bit of a global news report from 2012, and that was when the MAR was in operation. That was the very first medical program here in Canada. This one was titled "The Truth Behind Cannabis Licenses in Canada." And I have a little quote, a little comma here. Yeah, right, because I don't believe it's the actual truth, but that's what they've called it. Then when we get back, you'll hear a bit of how cannabis is good for the soul with Pony Boy and Los Marijuanos. You're listening to Reefer Reporters live here at lifestyleradio.net.
Hey, this is Cheech.
And this is Chong.
And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio. What is it? Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time. 420 Radio? Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
With more than 20,000 Canadians legally allowed to possess medical marijuana and more than 16,000 allowed to grow their own, how can communities trust that these licenses are being properly policed?
How do they know how it's been grown, where it's been kept, what they're doing with it?
And a recent RCMP report is not providing much comfort, which says that more than a third of marijuana trafficking cases involved licensed individuals who were growing more than was allowed. And while the medical marijuana program remains under a cloud of allegations that it's broken, this North York Toronto neighborhood lives under a cloud of its own.
2 days ago, the smoke was higher than in tree line.
As we told you yesterday, Terry Robinson lives just up the road from the home, which has 2 legal marijuana grow-up licenses, permitting up to 200 marijuana plants. Problem, neighbors say, is that the homeowners, including this man, Ali Amir Salam, has been burning it in large quantities in the backyard.
People are now being affected in the neighborhood.
Why?
Do you not feel sorry for that?
No, why should I be fortunate? Because this is real life.
No matter how this appears, Toronto police say this is all above board. But they warn, legal or not, marijuana grow-ops are magnets for trouble.
Marijuana grow-ops are 40 times more likely to set on fire. There's also other risks of home invasion robberies, risks of mold.
And more evidence that the system needs better oversight. Global's investigative program 16x9 has found that a black market for licenses has popped up, with a number of physicians more than willing to take people's money to sign off on them.
There is a fee of $1,000 plus HST.
Despite repeated requests, Health Canada wouldn't make anyone available for an interview for our story. However, in a statement it says, quote, "The government is very concerned that the program is open to abuse and that the production of marijuana by individuals in homes would be phased out." Now, what this means is that the medical marijuana supply would then come from a number of select licensed producers. Changes to the system, however, could take up to 2 years. As for what, if anything, can be done to stop the burning of marijuana in this backyard, we, like the residents, have been given the runaround. Toronto police say residents must take the matter up with Health Canada. Health Canada says it's a police or city issue, and the city, despite many calls, hasn't gotten back to me. One more example why it appears the program needs to be fixed.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reefer Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with cannabis and coffee with Tamarawana. Then tune in and catch Pottawa with Russell Barth, who calls himself the world's angriest pothead. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham and joint host Kim Cooper and Alicia Yashishin. No week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gignac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at lifestyleradio.net or at our sister site, 420radio.ca.
Inhale, exhale, thanks to the Disney boys, just got an ounce in a mail. Marijuana is good for the soul if you wanna. Roll a medical marijuana is good for the soul if you wanna. Roll a medical marijuana is good for the soul. If you wanna grow the medical marijuana is good for the soul. If you wanna grow the
We are back from a break and a quick medication system session. I think Kim's still trying to catch her lung there. And before we get back to the news, it's time for Kim's nuke segment that should catch your breath.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good.
Barely, but I'm here. Oh, maybe might have had a little dab too late there.
Maybe.
It's a break. Try to get a little bit greedy. Got an extra one in there. See, I'll pay for it now. Okay, so we're going to go way back when. In 1984, New Brunswick Conservative Premier Richard Hatfield was charged with possession after 35 grams of cannabis was found in his suitcase during a visit from the Queen. Hatfield was acquitted when he was at trial, but his Conservatives lost every seat in the next election. And a follow-up footnote to that story, only one prominent Canadian politician has ever gone to prison for cannabis. Conservative MLA Bob Wilson from Manitoba. He was convicted in 1980 on charges of conspiring to import 225 kilos of cannabis hidden in the seats being transported from Florida to Winnipeg. Now, I bring that up in support of the upcoming GMMs and why we continue to protest. A large segment of the population is never arrested, hassled, or bothered with in any way when they consume cannabis or because of their cannabis use. Yet races, people of other race, both Indigenous people as well as blacks in Canada, right here in Canada, not in the United States, right here in Canada, are largely disproportionately shown to be convicted of these crimes in our courts and in our jails. That's why we continue to protest today. As we can see throughout history, white, upstanding Canadian citizens that are members of Parliament seem to get a slide on this.
They do. And, you know, I'm just reading through this information that you sent me on this situation. I see he spent 7 years in prison, but he always maintained his innocence. He said he didn't know anything about that. But the guy, Ian Whitey McDonald, the alleged ringmaster behind all this, who was also arrested in 1980, never went to prison.
That's right. He was never convicted.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
There you go. Well,
you to protest today.
Yeah. Actually, I think I remember that. Some of that all happening way back then. Been around for a while, so. Okay, Kim. Thanks for that history moment. Now, we've done our Canadian news. I think we're going to get ready to do some international news now, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I think maybe before we take off, Kim, I said, let's do a flight check.
Flight check. I don't know.
They didn't play.
Oh, well.
Are we live? Okay.
Hey, man, where are we going?
Flight
Let's
check.
do the announcement.
Flight check.
Attention passengers.
Radio check.
Boarding now, flight 420.
All right, Kim. We were home. We're off the plane, hopefully.
we had a little technical difficulties, but it's all good.
It's all good. It's all good. It is all good because it's all Irie. We're in Jamaica.
We're in Jamaica, man. And we're going to be talking about some banking issues.
Yeah, man. The Jamaican Central Bank is asked to solve the cannabis banking issues. It sounds something similar to the U.S., where the central bank is to find a solution to banking issues that are tripping up development of the country's medical cannabis industry.
Yeah, this is happening across the globe. We're having issues with this because so many banks will not deal with cannabis or related companies because it's still considered an illicit drug. And there's laws against the banking laws for doing dealings with many of these legal and legitimate businesses.
Yes, their minister, Daryl Baz, he says the whole issue of banking arrangements, formal banking arrangements and stuff has to be addressed because these companies are being excluded. You know, What are they doing? They walking around with bags full of money or what?
Yeah, well, there's that, and we're facing that exact same problem right here in Canada. You know, a couple of years ago, even a few LPs were evicted from a few of our Canadian national banks that we have here, and they were asked to take their business elsewhere. And these are legal LPs that are dealing here in Canada. They had to change banks.
He made these comments at the launch of Chronic Relief Jamaica. It's a new medical cannabis company that received 7 licenses from the Cannabis Licensing Authority. So also Henry Lowe, a scientist there and researcher, he says that Jamaica is in danger of missing out on a great opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, Jamaica passed the ganja law back in 2015, which made possession of 2 ounces or less of cannabis a ticketable offense. The law also legalized possession for medical and therapeutic purposes. This launched the Jamaican cannabis industry into a brand new realm. Many businesses are having issues with banking.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. You know, all kinds of risk for holdups, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What do you do with the money? I mean, it's an issue that needs to be addressed for sure.
Well, like as you said, it has to be addressed, and you know it's happening in Jamaica, it's happening in different states in the U.S., it's happened here in Canada, and it's about to happen in Australia as well.
Yeah, flying off across a little bit over into the Aussie land, the land down under. Australia should tax and regulate cannabis, not prohibit it, says some of their ministers over there.
Yes, they do. They said that I lost that. Oh, I knew he was going to do that. They say that cannabis arrests have accounted for the largest proportion of illicit drug arrests in Australia. In 2015 to 2016, 2 million Australians who use cannabis every year are arrested.
Yeah. You know, 80,000 cannabis arrests, over 6% increase from the previous year. And it's getting worse and worse and worse every year. These are resources that can go on real crime, real issues that they're having in their society can be dealt with. The resources, the money they save on deploying those resources for nonsensical crimes, it's astounding.
It sure is. I want to make a correction there. There's 2 million Australians who use cannabis every year. There's 80,000 arrests.
Yeah, 80,000 arrested.
80,000 arrests. And of those arrests, the overwhelming majority, 90% of them, were consumers. Well, only 10% were actually the providers. So, they're getting the low-hanging fruit that we see everywhere else.
That's right. You're getting self-medicating patients. That's what I consider recreational users, because 90% of people that use cannabis are self-medicating for one reason or another. Once you get down to the bones of it, of why they actually consume. They're self-medicating. They're just either uneducated enough to realize it, or they don't have the doctor to write the prescription, so they're just carrying on with what they know works. So, just because you don't have a prescription doesn't mean it isn't medication.
Yeah, and then it's exactly. These 90% of the people. How many of them are patients?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So, they're talking about making a change over there, and they're talking, cannabis tax revenue could help fund treatment and housing and social programs and everything else. They're looking at states like Colorado, and they're hoping to make a change. And I hope that carries through. Yeah,
exactly. Because it lessens the strain on law enforcement. Mind you, when you listen to our police forces here in Canada, you got to wonder about that. A poll by Essential Media found that in 2016 that 55% of Australians support taxing and regulating cannabis, with at least 50% of the following groups supportive. That's men, women, the Green voters, different. I don't know the political parties here, but there are people in favor of it for sure.
Yeah, well, the numbers are in line with what we're seeing in the United States. They're a little bit higher than that in Canada, but they're not far off from what we're seeing in the United States. Polls in the U.S. have found over 60% support taxing and regulating cannabis, with over 50% of Republican voters now support it.
Well, the headline says Australia should tax and regulate cannabis, and we agree.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So hopefully we see some progress happen in Aussie the land down under.
Let's hope so. While we're over here and we're flying around in the big jet, why don't we go to Zimbabwe while we're here?
Sure. Let's take a detour around. I can do that.
All right, good stuff. I see in Zimbabwe, we had a story about Africa, and one of the states or one of the countries within Africa were looking at cannabis. And now we have another one.
Yeah. The great continent of Africa, so many countries within African soil are now embracing legalization and embracing cannabis, as a possible cash crop and a way to get back into farming and supplying the globe with much needed exports.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, for sure. And they're considering legalizing it for a number of months now, and they will now become one of the few countries able to turn that into a source revenue. And everybody knows that Africa could use those benefits.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Zimbabwe's been considering legalizing the drug for a number of months, they say. So it's now possible to request a license to grow cannabis, according to a recently issued government notice. Both individuals and companies can apply.
Yeah, previously production and possession of cannabis there would bring up to 12 years in prison.
Yeah.
So medical will be legal. Recreation will remain illegal.
Yeah, at this point, they're still frowning on the rec movement, but it's nice to see the steps in the medicinal movement. And I think once that takes hold and becomes more widely accepted, so will the more traditional non-medicinal use or recreational use throughout the country. I think acceptance will come in time, but it's a great step forward.
Yeah, because it is a very conservative country. But they say that there's other places, Malawi and Ghana, that are also looking at legalization. So it's spreading. better get those banking issues fixed then, right?
Yes, and I mean, largely it comes down to the United States and getting them to stop pushing the issue, because I mean, mostly that's that we're bullied into it. But we'll talk about the states on the jet on the way.
Yes, well, let's head there now, because I think we're down to our final few stories, and they're all based in the USA.
Yeah, we're gonna get off the jet first in Michigan.
This 420 airliner has been pretty cool, man.
Yes, man. They were taking care of us with dabs and stuff on the way. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. All right. They don't say Yaman in Michigan. They just say find an alternative to banks.
Again.
Yes. The state of Michigan wants to help cannabis businesses find an alternative to banks in Michigan. So there you go. Yet again, the banks are back in the news, but at least we've got a state that's looking to work with its businesses and try and find alternatives. Yeah, exactly. But it's going to take some time by the looks of it.
Yeah, he says it was Rick Johnson chairs the state medical marijuana licensing board, and he says most financial institutions will not work with marijuana-related businesses because the drug remains illegal under federal law. That doesn't mean that businesses don't have checking accounts and can't handle electronic transfers. So they're looking for non-commercial, fact-based reporting made possible with your support. Sorry, I just got sidetracked.
Yes, I know what you mean. Got the dog in the room, don't you?
Yeah. Sorry. But they're looking for alternatives for the banking system.
Yeah, exactly. And it's widespread. Eventually, obviously, here in Canada, it's things are better than what they were, and it's going to happen. It's going to have to happen in the U.S.
Yeah, a couple of banks in Canada have come out and said, okay, we're changing our way of thinking. We're going to work with you guys. It's not being really frowned upon by the U.S. market for them doing it. So, I mean, more have to climb on board.
Correct. More do have to climb on board, because it looks like there may be a bipartisan bill before the Senate to back state rights on cannabis.
Yeah, things are heating up over in the state of Washington and on Capitol Hill there. Elizabeth Warren is with Cory Gardner on this issue.
Yes, one's a Republican, one's a Democrat, and they plan on going to see President Donald Trump and take him up on his word, because he talked before about state rights on cannabis in the past. So they want to, here you go. Here's going to be a law to protect those state rights. Because some of these states have obviously been at it for a few years, and businesses have grown. People have got jobs. States are making money. Homeless are being helped. Kids are getting educated. So let's start to protect them. So they want a bill that's going to do that. So let's take Donald Trump up on what he's been saying.
Yeah, he's basically saying, look, if Oklahoma wants to maintain prohibition, then that's fine. Let them do it. But if Colorado doesn't, that's fine. Let them do it. You can't be interfering with state law.
Yeah, exactly. The proposed bill would not alter the scheduling of cannabis, unfortunately. Still stay as a Schedule I drug, which is nasty, or the most tightly regulated, making it as illegal and difficult to study as, okay, that's the Schedule I drug explanation. So they have to, it's going to stay there, but it'd be so nice for them to be able to move that out of that Schedule I situation.
Yeah, and it's funny to have opposite sides of the floor coming together on an issue like this, but it was clear when Sessions removed the Obama era Cole memo, which provided some provisions for state marijuana industries. So, I mean, at that point, they knew that their targets were the same and their ideals were the same. So they came together.
Yeah, and just like here in Canada, no illusion that these bills just going to fly through easily. They do expect some amendments to it, and they do expect once that bill hits the president's desk that he will have to hold up his end of the bargain and sign it and protect those states and those people in them.
Yeah, well, I mean, he said all along that that's what he would do, so I guess we'll have to see if he lives up to that expectation.
Yeah, let's hope so. And this is all around the Cole memo that Jeff Sessions rescinded. The guy who would rather send, what did he say? Something about because of the opiate epidemic. He says, just tell them to go home and take an aspirin.
Yeah. Have an aspirin, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Jeff needs to have a session, that's for sure. And I know the Dr. Gupta, whose special was on last night on CNN. He's gone and written Sessions and told him you got to open your eyes, just like he had to.
Yeah, that's right. Things are not what they appear, and if you're not willing to do the research and put the work in to find out what the exact facts are without your predisposed opinions getting in the way, then you should keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, exactly. So get educated before you start opening that mouth. All right, and talking about people who open their mouths, and it's not really opening the mouths, they opened up, I'm going to say, a gateway for the newspaper business to come up with cannabis and how to present it to the people and come up with their own, I'm going to say, their own journalists all reporting on the cannabis issue. And that was Cannabist.
Yeah.
But after that groundbreaking thing that they've done in 2012, there was a movie that was released around these people, around this cannabis. And what do we have to report today, Kim?
Well, apparently the issue that came out of that, the magazine, the Cannabist, is being basically disbanded. A bunch of the editors have been fired. All of the staff has been let go. They don't have a support staff at all.
No, the Cannabist has cut all the editorial staff and will replace them with bots.
Mm-hmm. Bots.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get our information with bots.
Yeah, here in Canada we got straight cannabis coming, new division or thing within the Vancouver Straight, I believe it's the newspaper out west. And here we have one that's being closed down to replace with bots.
Yeah, the Cannabist, I mean, I use that site quite a bit for information and for news. It's heartbreaking. It really is. It was a great site. They had some great editors, editorials in there. Great magazine, or news articles all the way around. Yeah. It'll be sad to see it being dismantled, but they're saying if it winds up going up for sale, there's possibly some interest in just purchasing it outright and continuing it on.
Maybe, but they say the content will be aggregated based on what's tagged marijuana. There will be no editorial team to give the site a voice, perspective, or blood. Readers will have to pick up on this and won't like it, according to Jake Brown.
Well, no, I mean, the site itself, it'll die. If it goes bot related, it's going to die. All of these ones that are bot related do, because they're 90% of the time they're biased. They're not posting factual stuff, and there's no heart to it. There's no perspective. You need writers, you need editorialists, you need commenters, you need research.
Yes, exactly. Well, one of the writers from there, He's resigned. He resigned well back from the publication back in 2016, and he started up one called Grasslands. So he is in discussion with the Denver Post about purchasing cannabis if they decide to sell it.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to do this and they're going to tear it down and just turn it into a bot thing, if you don't care that much about it, just get rid of it. Just sell it. Sell it to this guy and let it carry on and let it be and evolve into what it should be, which is a great mag.
Yeah, sure was. I know, like yourself, you got information from there. I got information from there. Others did. I always saw this stuff being shared on social media.
Yeah.
So I don't know what changed this, but they obviously changed it. So
yeah. We'll have to see evolving situation with the Cannabist in the future.
Yeah, it did. We do. We have to watch, see what happens. Okay, Kim. The jet really flew there today. We covered, I believe, 16 different stories.
Yeah, we rocked the shit today, I'll tell you. We were all over the place. We've covered a lot. Yeah, 16 stories of the day, plus a history moment, plus 420s and GMMs. It's been a very busy show indeed, with jam-packed, filled with information.
And I imagine next week will be just as busy because we've got the global marijuana marches this weekend that we'll be reporting on. And talking about reporting on, catch the 420 Road Show Saturday from the Toronto Globe Marijuana March, and we'll be connecting with others. That's the plan, as well as, Kim, if we can connect with you at your Globe Marijuana March up in Timmins, try to cover the country.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a busy day organizing when you're on the other side and you're wind up on the organizing committee. You wind up really, really busy. But it's on my list of things to do to chime in on the show live from the GMMs this Saturday from Timmins, Ontario, and first annual GMM.
Yep, let's tune in on Saturday afternoon sometime, and you should catch us. So
awesome, sounds great.
Okay. That's a report for basically almost the last 2 weeks of April of 2018. And in closing, we'd like to say thank you to listening to our broadcast. And if you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends. And please don't forget, you can usually catch us Mondays around 4:20. And educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
Far catch you later.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.